Taeyoung and Jungkook continue to show clear signs that they are deeply connected. Recent details make it clear that there is a very special relationship between them, full of affection and moments that cannot be ignored. One of the most striking points was the Celine gold earring that Taeyoung wore, which many noticed was very similar to the one Jungkook was wearing. Although they are not exactly the same, the similarity is so strong that it doesn't seem like a coincidence. This isn't new to those who have followed Taekook for a long time. They always find subtle but obvious ways to connect, whether through accessories, clothing, or actions. Some people believe that the earring was a gift from Taeyoung to Jungkook, and although this hasn't been officially confirmed, the idea makes perfect sense and fits with the type of gestures they usually have between them. In addition, another very special detail has to do with a keychain that Jungkook usually carries. In one of his recent appearances, Taeyoung also had it with him. It doesn't look like a simple ornament. She probably borrowed it to feel Jungkook close during their trip. These kinds of actions are very personal, and if they didn't have a close relationship, they wouldn't do it. They're gestures that show affection, attention, and a real emotional connection. And there's more. During the recording of Are You Sure?, Jungkook used Taeyoung's phone to take a selfie while driving an electric car. At that moment, Jungkook gave the camera an intense look. Some people misinterpreted the scene as being for Jimin, but when analyzed closely, it's clear that the look was directed at Taeyoung. Jungkook's use of the phone, his spontaneous actions, and his expression show that he wanted to share that moment with Taeyoung, not anyone else. This refutes many false rumors that try to separate them or shift the focus to other people. But the gestures between them remain consistent and natural, and if we pay attention, everything fits together, from the earrings, the keychains, the shared phones, to the glances. Everything points to a relationship that's more than just friendship. There's an emotional closeness that's seen, repeated, and felt every time they're together or even indirectly mentioned. Despite rumors or what some people say, the facts speak for themselves. We're not imagining things, we're seeing real, repeated, and meaningful behaviors that build a solid history between Taeyoung and Jungkook. For years, they've maintained a connection that, even if not expressed in words, is evident in every small gesture, and that's what makes many people believe in and support this relationship. They don't need to confirm everything in public to understand what's going on. What they show with their way of looking, with what they share, with the details they repeat, it's enough to see that there's love, there's respect, and there's a true connection. Best of all, they continue to demonstrate it even in simple moments like a selfie, an earring, or a keychain. Now it's easier to understand why Taeyoung went to Jin's concert on Saturday instead of Sunday. He already had to travel to Japan that day, so he was only at the event for a short time. He arrived, said hello, and left without staying long because his flight was early and he had to get ready. Meanwhile, on Sunday, it was Jungkook who attended the concert, but this time accompanied by Suga and Jimin. Although he was present, he seemed different, somewhat quieter, and more serious. Many noticed that his expression was different and he seemed to be missing something. This void was evident to many fans, since the last time Taeyoung and Jungkook were together at a concert was at J-Hope's, and everything was very different there. At that event, they were seen laughing, enjoying themselves, and sharing moments that were natural. Their joy was more visible when they were together. Therefore, at Jin's concert, this absence was felt, and it was especially noticeable in Jungkook, who was not by his side with the man who has often been his most constant support. When Taeyoung returned from his trip, something unexpected happened. BTS did a live with all the members, and it was a special moment because it had been a long time since they'd shared a group broadcast. During the live, everyone spoke or entertained themselves in their own way, but within that space, one thing clearly stood out: Taeyoung and Jungkook seemed to be in their own world. Without needing to speak much, they shared gestures, long glances, and gentle touches that showed they were connected. They didn't use big words, but the way they looked at each other spoke volumes. While everything was happening around them, the two seemed completely focused on each other. It was as if nothing else mattered. That closeness is something that has been seen several times. When they're together, they seem calmer and more confident. Jungkook, in particular, tends to appear more relaxed when Taeyoung is around. It shows in his expression, his attitude, and his behavior. In official BTS content, whether at concerts, programs, or documentaries, it's common to see Jungkook feeling good when he's with Taeyoung. They don't need to look for it, they just get closer, they understand each other, and that creates a different atmosphere. They can be surrounded by thousands of people and still feel like it's just the two of them. It's not something that can be faked or created on film, it's a dynamic that happens on its own. The expressions they share together are distinct. They don't need to do much to create that effect. That's perhaps what's most striking, that amidst so many activities, cameras, and stages, they manage to maintain that personal space. Jungkook demonstrates this every time he smiles more naturally when he's next to Taeyoung. That kind of tranquility can't be acted. Recently, Taeyoung shared Omar Apollo's song Trouble as background music, a song that conveys very intense emotions related to desire, melancholy, and the connection that remains even at a distance. Omar is an artist who has always been transparent with his feelings and expresses it freely through his music without hiding who he is or what inspires him. Trouble talks about deeply missing someone, the kind of absence that hurts because the person who left meant so much. These lyrics reflect feelings that many people can relate to even if they don't say them out loud. In addition to his music, Omar is also acting for the first time in a film titled Queer, which tells a story set in Mexico during the 1950s. At that time, there were many social rules that prevented people from loving freely, especially if that love was between two men. That's why this film is so important, because it shows how two people try to live their love in secret in an era that didn't allow it. What makes Taeyoung's choice special isn't just the theme song, but everything it represents. Taeyoung has always shown that he's not afraid to show himself as he is. He shares what he feels and what he likes without worrying about the opinions of others. Jungkook is like that too. They both have an authentic way of expressing themselves. They don't hide or act to fit in with what others expect of them. When they're together, they behave with a freedom rarely seen in public, and the most notable thing is that they don't do it to attract attention. The relationship between Taeyoung and Jungkook has been observed by many people, not because they say anything specific, but because of what they convey when they're around each other. They don't need words to express what they feel. Their gestures speak clearly. They touch each other naturally, they seek each other out effortlessly, they look at each other spontaneously, and they understand each other without explanation. All of this happens repeatedly, not in a single isolated moment, but over time. And that's what gives it meaning. These behaviors don't seem prepared or rehearsed, but rather part of their way of being together. No matter whether they're in front of cameras, with their colleagues, or on different stages, you always sense the same connection between them. A connection that doesn't depend on what they say, but on how they relate to each other. That's why so many people feel there's something deeper between them. These aren't rumors or baseless assumptions. It's about observing how two people share moments of constant closeness, how they silently accompany each other, how they seek each other out even when there's no need to. That's what has drawn attention for so long. Omar Apollo's song and the story it tells make perfect sense in this context because they reflect what it means to love someone in the midst of a reality that sometimes doesn't allow for everything. Taeyoung and Jungkook, on the other hand, don't seem to hold themselves back. They've always found ways to express themselves freely without saying it directly. That sincerity is what sets them apart and what strengthens the idea that there is a very special emotional bond between them. There's no need to put a name or label on it. Just look at how they treat each other, how they care for each other, and how they've maintained that closeness over time. What they convey is authentic and consistent. They don't seek to prove anything, they simply live what they feel, and they do so with a naturalness that speaks louder than any explanation. What happens between Taeyoung and Jungkook can't be copied or invented. They don't act to get attention, they don't seek each other out so others will see them. They seek each other out because that's how their bond works. It's a natural way of being. If one sits down, the other sits with them. If one smiles, the other is already looking at them. They don't need to make a noise or make grand gestures to be noticed. Their relationship happens effortlessly. It's a routine that has been repeated so many times that it's no longer surprising, but it does make it clear that it's not something they're faking. They're used to touching each other without fear, to looking at each other calmly, to staying close without excuses. There's no distance or discomfort. On the contrary, there's trust. They feel safe being with each other. And when that becomes constant, when no one asks them to do it and they still keep doing it, it stops being ordinary. It's not about putting on an act for others, but rather a kind of closeness that has grown over time. Many people say that everything that happens between them is part of a show. That they do it because they're public figures, that it's all a script. But that explanation falls short. What they show doesn't have that forced energy of something planned. There's no sign that they're faking. On the contrary, what they do comes so easily that it seems they forget there are cameras. There's a huge difference between a staged moment and a real reaction. A fan can tell when a hug feels empty and when one comes straight from the heart. In the case of Taeyoung and Jungkook, everything they do together has that natural style that needs no embellishment. The way they understand each other without words, how they move in time with each other, how they accommodate each other without invading each other's space, says much more than any public statement.